Hello, Øystein Hansen here of Ala Nordpol. Today we're going to talk a bit about Catalyst DREP or Direct Representative. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've been attending some of the DREP workshops and I plan to represent as a direct representative in the future, and I want us to go a bit through what DREP means and also some things to discuss when it comes to privacy about voting. But before we go into detail, let's have a refresh of the two treasury papers. So let's zoom in a bit. Cardano basically tries to have a treasury so it will keep inventing and reinvigorating and constantly improve. And this is something you see more and more in the cryptocurrencies such as Algorand, putting heavy emphasis on treasury system and voting system, and also Cardano. So the gist of it is to have a treasury period and where projects are submitted, discussed, and voted for, and then the top ranked based on some form of voting ranks are then voted in and will be founded. That's the gist of it. In the work proposed back then in the original treasury paper, they discussed this liquid democracy and that this could help create a better collaborative intelligence. So this means you can all have this form of hybrid between direct democracy and representative democracy by you can vote yourself on whatever issue you want to vote on yourself, and then you can delegate your vote to a representative in those issues you don't want to vote on yourself. And of course, this already brings up questions like what happens when you delegate your vote and the delegator votes against what you yourself vote. But these are easily solvable things that you just have to inform in advance how it will act. But clearly, it's a lot of potential in such a liquid democracy system because it allows more efficient group thinking. You can delegate to representative on things you don't have as much expert knowledge in, and what you have expert knowledge in yourself, you can of course vote yourself more. So I believe, in theory at least, this should create more efficient voting process. And another reminder is that the treasury system based on a yes, no, abstain. So as you will see in the direct representative, the abstain part is something they want to encourage more activity and more votes. So yes or no on a project. We'll look at that more. Another quick reminder is that currently the way voting votes is actually it's a snapshot on a second blockchain called Jormungandr. This from some of the SBOs back in the days. In the first testnets we used Jormungandr, but basically Jormungandr has this voting function and Catalyst utilizes this, and because of this it means there has to be a snapshot. I think it was in August, and then now in September we vote with this voting power, and it has all sort of like nuances such as if you did not withdraw your rewards, those are not counted in. It only counts for what's not on the reward account but on the main payment address. So yeah, another thing to keep in mind as these things are evolving. I'm sure how we vote itself could be changing in the future. For example, Mithril has a way of stakeholder threshold voting, but we will see. Just a reminder. And basically, in the original paper, the goal is to have a collaborative process between voters but also experts. So it's envisioned that some voters have more knowledge on a topic than others. This is a bit different from a direct representative, and we have not yet filled this role. I think this also is something up to the community. But a direct representative could be someone who is an expert on a topic, but in my opinion, it could also be someone who works with others who are expert on a topic, or has systems and apparatus around himself to have a good knowledge about what is voting about. For example, let's say you have a group of SPOs, a guild, and one of them is voted to, or the guild wants that person to be a direct representative, then the guild can delegate to him, but all of the power and the knowledge of the guild can be used in the discussion to what they will vote. Yeah, so let's look at the other treasury paper, the more recent one, where they discuss some of the properties a vote should have. So I want to highlight a few things, but basically this is a great paper, amazing paper, really showing like what are the properties we want out of a voting system on the blockchain. It's wonderful research. But for my discussion, I want to highlight this element of confidentiality, because this is something I think goes a bit against what the Drep is, and I will try to explain that later. But basically, this notion of privacy might not be the best idea if, for example, you're voting on your own projects. You might want to disclose that for ethical reasons, or also actually like I, as a voter, delegating my vote, I want to know, can I trust this person to vote what he says he's going to vote? And what exactly does he say he's going to vote? Is he going to vote something else than I want him to vote? So, and you can also see this in how SPOs, for example, they public their pledge, and a direct representative will also have to public their voting power. So already like this privacy is different for this dynamic for privacy is different for direct representative, and will have to be public with, and we have to verify our identities. So I think in a system you need to have a good mix, and you have to ask yourself the question. This, we use this in law all the time, like what really is the purpose behind this law? And in this case, like what is the purpose behind the privacy? Well, one of the main reasons is you want to avoid like this type of attacks where a person can influence in advance, or an organization can influence in advance enough that it's that you can already influence the vote and have knowledge how the vote will end. And the other thing you want to avoid is that let's say it's very clear that a topic will not win, and then you choose to vote on something else than what you would have voted if you had not known the end result based on all of the public information available. So these are real problems, but I think also there are many good cases for saying that a direct representative has to give some form of information before voting. We cannot only hold them accountable after the voting act is done, because they could have a large influence on the ecosystem. DREP can currently have 1% of all votes. Anything above that will not be counted, but 1% of all votes. So it's enough to influence 100 direct representative, and you have 100% control, if assuming those have that large delegation, of course. So it's really a case of finding a middle ground here in how much privacy do you have on one hand to prevent these attacks, versus how much do you protect the voter when they are delegating a vote. And I will show more example of what I mean with that. So yeah, let's look at and by the way, all of this is publicly available. It's from the community governance oversight page, and you can see the different workshops. I'm in the video of both of these workshop, and then you can click to links on the slides. And yeah, in the first workshop, and this is planned to be 3 to 4 workshops going forward. It looks at how the implementation is on liquid democracy and the voting registration, and creating a code of conduct together. And I think that's really one of the big things we need to try to do as a group, is to together find good ethical conduct and what it means to be a direct representative. And for sure, it's not like I have the only good idea of what is it to be a direct representative. But the more ideas we get together and the more we see it works, then the more efficiently we can implement this liquid democracy together. So in the original paper, it's you could delegate to another person who then again can delegate to a direct representative. I believe that's not currently implemented. I believe you can only directly delegate to one or more direct representative. So you don't have to only delegate to one. You can delegate some of your voting power. I believe that's the current implementation. Yeah, like 2% to this DREP and 10% to this DREP and such and such. And why do this? Because it increases voting participation. It's helps low balance budget wallets. To if you combine many of them into a direct representative, they will have power together. Like again, for example, just an example, like small SPO groups, like X SPO guild or something like that, could join together, have one of them as a representative, and delegate their vote to this person, and as a group think about votes. And yeah, create a cohort of individuals that coordinate and form policy together, source and review data, and consult with experts. Currently, like for example, me as a direct representative, I am not an expert, but I do have some knowledge from all of the years in the ecosystem, and I am in some of the guild groups, for example, and I do all of the technical training like Plutus and Haskell learning courses. But I think we need to really remain humble on what do we have of knowledge and when do we need to know more if we're going to be a very effective group of direct representatives. But also it means like to put your face out there, to trust in yourself that you have an opinion that's valuable, because as a direct representative you also have to be active, you have to vote on some topics. So basically, it will be a canvas for voting power. That's what a direct representative is. The safeguard is this 1%. We don't know all of the details of it, like what, but basically after 1%, you are cut off. It doesn't count more voting power. And if it's 1% of all the votes or 1% of all ADA, many like questions like that. But basically there are safeguards, so no single DREP can have too much influence. And I guess that's quite different than the paper. There's no such limitations in the treasury paper original. It's quite different from most political systems, but I think it's good. It's in the spirit of decentralization. I'm very fine with it. I think it's a good move for the first initial experiment, as long as we can implement it well. For example, there was questions like, what happens when you reach the 1%? Do you just disappear? And then what if those people withdraw their vote? Like, can you attack a DREP by overflowing him with vote and then at this last minute removing it? So it's important to get this right, but I think it's definitely possible, and I understand the ethos. I understand that this is good to try to have this decentralization. Yeah, and this is the interesting part, because we are supposed to show a vested interest in the future of Cardano, and we have to be transparent at all times and remain open of any conflicts. Take me, for example, I also work at an exchange. I vote privately. It's my own opinions as a person who have cared for Cardano since 2017. I was one of the guardians of Cardano. I helped with the change in leadership in Cardano Foundation. I have a lifelong interest now for Cardano. I don't see any foreseeable future where I will not be following this project strongly. I am doing Cardano summits in the Nordic region. Like I'm really, I live and breathe for the success of Cardano. And that's me as a private person. But I have to remain transparent. Like, for example, I'm voting on some exchange issue. You should know I also work for an exchange. And I think I will try to be a good role model for that because there will be other people who will be in conflict of interest type of situation, and it's very important we are transparent in those situations. And this is why when we also have to provide this rationale for each proposal that we made public, I believe it's good we can also show what are we voting, because how else will you as a voter have confidence, and how else can you say that we truly did what we promised to do, if we can't tell in advance what we are going to do. And yeah, the founding, I mean, this would be for a founding period, so over 3 months, you could get up to $3,000 for it. I think this is amazing for, let's imagine there's a town or a city in a place where the average salary is not that high. You suddenly can organize, and let's say you have already in this place, for I am familiar with War Mobile, for example. So in Zanzibar, they're rolling out War Mobile, and let's say people are starting to become invested and interested in the Cardano ecosystem. They could form a voting group there and have a representative from this local area represent them and vote on issues they care about. And just imagine the impact and the possibilities to have someone who can actually afford a living working as a DREP. That just blows my mind. So for me, it's not something I would live on. Only the top percentage will get this type of salaries, and only over a period, I believe it's 3 months, but we will see how fast future iteration will be. But and there's only 150 DREPs that will be eligible, so you really have to get percentage of votes. Um, but very, very, very interesting experiment to try to do this. And yeah, we have told earlier there's a 1% safeguard. And as a representative, everything will change when it comes to voting, in the fact that we will no longer just have absence as the preferred method. The system now will really encourage you to vote yes or no, because you should, to earn rewards, even as a single voter, you need to have a minimum of 30 votes and 10 challenge proposals voted on to receive votes. You can still vote less, but you will not receive any rewards. Your vote will count, but no rewards will be given. And in the second workshop, we looked a bit more at how to register. So the new voting center, maybe it will be active for Phone 10, who knows. You can register as an active voter, you can delegate your vote, you can become a DREP and represent your community again. So it's a bit different than the idea of this expert that's voting only on what he knows. It's also a representative representing a group of people and what they believe are good choices to vote. You will have to fill out basic information, but also a bit about your achievements, your experience, motivations, what you have done as contributions, what's your expertise, and we had good discussion that we should have maybe more tags, but you can search by tag for a DREP fitting your interests, and you will show your socials, and you will have to agree to a whole bunch of things about your information that will be made public, such as your voting history. And yeah, then you will have this dashboard where you will see your stake data. I guess this means your own vote data, and then your delegated data, so, and the combined voting power. And I believe this will be public to all others, so others can check what's your total voting power. Yeah, and the default sorting is random, so you will not get the one with the most votes as a default. And you have a tag for what type of DREP you are. and you can click and see the voting power. So what's your own voting power? What's the total voting power? And yeah, so few things to highlight. So as you can see, you already have to disclose a lot of things, and I think one important thing is this privacy versus ethical. So clearly, you should disclose if you're going to vote on your own project, but I believe it should be go further than that. So if you have tokens in a project, you should disclose that you have tokens in this project and that you're going to vote on it. I have, for example, I own World Mobile tokens, and yeah, I support some of the World Mobile token projects, and I will give a rationale to why I voted for them. And it's important to disclose this so the voter knows what is my self-interests. Um, and then there's this thing about privacy versus confidence in voting. So how can you be sure that DREP is going to vote as you say? It's maybe simple for a small group, let's say a community of SPOs, where they agree in advance and it's efficient for the information to flow. Let's say there are just 50 members. But what if you have a direct representative representing thousands of voters, and how would you do this discussion in an effective way and let everyone know what's your intention if you can't disclose what you're voting? I think this is problematic, and I believe it's good to disclose what you're going to vote so the voter has some confidence in what you're going to vote. And then you have this privacy versus accountability. So I think you should not only be held accountable after you vote, because uh, if you don't have to disclose what you plan to vote, you can change plans at the spur of a moment. So integrity is built upon proven track record over time, saying you're going to do something, then actually doing it. And that's also another reason I believe you should be able to disclose voting is for accountability, not only after the vote, but before the vote. Accountability of what your intent is. So the other thing is like, it's already this privacy is slanted when you become more a public figure, such as when you have more stake. Actually, it's not correct to call it stake in the game because everyone has stake when they own Cardano. But if you, for example, are producing blocks for the block network, you have to public how much you pledged. And this is, I believe, it's the correct thing to do. The more influence you have on the system, the more you have to be held accountable, the more you have to be public about yourself. So this is why an SPO will have to show his pledge. And this is how we can rank them, because we can say they have an interest in the success of the blockchain because they own such and such amounts of the blockchain. And I think this should be the same for the voting power of DREPs. Excuse me. But the thing there is like, I don't want it to become like only the rich can be DREPs, only if you were from the start part of Cardano. It's great we have those people. I'm one of those. I was there early, but we also need to have the new people. So it should not influence your voting power in any other way than directly by how much you have as your own voting power. It should not like amplify the power of others, but it should be public. And since we already publicized this, I think it's another argument for basically we should public also what we're planning to vote. And you can also say it's a privacy versus this group expertise. Like, you cannot possibly have good discussions if you cannot also disclose what is your intent to do. So if you're going to create expertise not only from a single person's expertise but from group thinking, then you also need to allow users to share their intent on voting. So this is my opinion on this subject. All right, so I hope this video made it a little bit more interesting, maybe to look at direct representatives. I believe there's plenty of opportunity to get on a train, and I believe Phone 10 will be when maybe we will start testing this system. And yeah, hope you enjoy the video. See you next time.